Hi everyone, my name is 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗚𝗓. I am a wellness and lifestyle expert. After having stage 3 bowel cancer, I changed everything in my life, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I'm pleased to say that I feel healthier and happier than I have ever been 2 years after my diagnosis. So I feel that my purpose now is to help people doing the same. I believe strongly empowering people to make changes in their lives so they can heal themselves. And I feel that by making small changes, they can make a massive impact in their health. I'm here today with Diane. I am super excited about hearing her story. Instead of choosing a path that the majority of people would have chosen, Diane created and carved her own path. And I am really pleased and really blessed to have her here. And I started doing those interviews because when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was really scared as I didn't know anybody who had cancer. And I feel doing those conversations, during these conversations, people can see a light at the end of the tunnel. People can fill their hearts with hope, and hopefully they can learn from a survivor story as well. So hi Diane, how are you?
I'm well, thanks 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗓. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just gonna put the volume a bit up, so just to make sure that it's on my, yeah. So if you could please tell us a little bit about, the beginning of the story. When were you diagnosed? How old you were, and what happened just before you diagnosed? That would be awesome.
Okay, so I'm 54 now, and when I was diagnosed was in 2018. So I was just about 52, and before I was actually diagnosed, I had very low energy, but because of my age, we all went straight to menopause and the sort of taking on that path. Going back a little bit, at 50, I had the bowel cancer screening test that they send you in the mail. And, reluctantly, like everybody, we do it. But I'm one of those people that at every 10 years, I like to do some tests just to see where I'm at for that decade, what I need to work on, and try and keep my health really up there. So I took the test. I remember the day I got the results back, it was negative, and for whatever reason, I thought, oh, that's great. And not for a second did I think that it wouldn't be, but it was just, okay, I'm going into my 50th year or 51st year in really good health and in that area, and didn't think any more about it. But I was having these other issues with fatigue, and sometimes, and right through my life, probably some bowel issues with, going to the toilet one way or the other, not being totally okay. But
how many years would you say that you were having these problems, like with the bowel?
Look, it's really interesting because of the work that I've done since then. I look back, I've had it all my life, but it was very closely linked with stress and trauma.
Yeah.
So when I was in certain situations around certain people that made me, that I couldn't process my feelings around, I would get diarrhea really bad. And I didn't associate that terribly well at the time. I didn't think that was what was going on. But since doing the work, I realized that that's the problem. That was part of the problem. Did that cause cancer? I don't know. I'm saying it's probably a contributor to a whole heap of things that take you down that path. So,
and when you say you were fatigued, were you clinically diagnosed with anemia or not?
No. So I've always had low iron anyway. And I take iron, but the type of iron I was taking, my body just wasn't processing. So I wasn't really getting anywhere with it. And that changed, up and down because, having children, being more menstrual, less menstrual, that kind of thing, that did affect us. So there were definitely things going on that I was trying to manage throughout my life that, can all point in a certain direction. And when you look back, you start to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together. And I think that some of the work about, you know, talking to people is that you are the best, you have the best knowledge of your body. We're sometimes led to believe we know nothing about our bodies, but we are actually the best. We have the best advice about what's going on. Someone else might have some really great information about what we can do from here, and you have to source those people yourself. But I think we give up our ability to know ourselves pretty well too easily. We leave it outside the doctor's door office and we put ourselves in there and we think that we know nothing, and we actually know a lot. And we need to have a physician or a practitioner that will sit long enough with you to help you connect the dots and care enough to sit that long so that you can find a better path to health. But this is where I was at. I wasn't putting those things together terribly well, even though I've always been interested in health. So something that did happen, I had been at work, and then physically I passed a blood clot. And my very beautiful colleague and friend sitting next to me said, "Oh gosh, go to the doctor now." I said, ironically, I have an appointment tomorrow. The next day I was going in to have my results of a pap smear test. So I went to the doctor and I told her what happened, and she did a little examination on me and said, "Nothing much here, you'll have to have a colonoscopy." And at 50, I wanted to have a colonoscopy, and the doctor said no, there was no reason to have it. So I'd wasted a fair bit of time, about 14 months. And so Christmas came, I couldn't get in, we had to go through Christmas, and it was till January that I had the test, which was the day before Australia Day, which is why I'll never forget it. Yeah. And I literally barely opened my eyes, and the doctor looked down and he said, "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Krieger, it's not the result you wanted. I'm pretty sure you have, 99.9% sure you have bowel cancer." Shock and horror. And it was awful because they just leave. I really was just left there. They went on to the next patient. I asked them to please tell my husband, because he had obviously left and come back to pick me up. And they didn't. So my husband walked in and he said, "So everything good?" And I looked at him and I said, "They didn't tell you? I think I have bowel cancer." And the nurse started to cry. She felt so sorry for us because she really saw Jay's face, and we sat in a little room and the doctor did explain to us what was to happen next. And I don't know, we didn't really take much in. We were sort of shocked that day. So next day was Australia Day celebrations, and there I was with all my friends. I didn't tell anybody, and then I forgot about it, to be honest. I just couldn't connect to the idea that this was going on for me. But very quickly I had to see a surgeon, and I did have a portion of my bowel removed. And what had happened before that is I started to do some juicing just before my diagnosis. I just thought, to help with this fatigue, maybe I can change my diet. So I started to do some juicing. I'd done a little bit of reading, and I'd lost a little bit of weight, probably a bit of bloating and a bit of toxins and that kind of thing, really.
Yeah. So just to back up a bit, so when you, at 50, when you mentioned you wanted to have a colonoscopy, you wanted to have the colonoscopy because you had something inside you to say, okay, that test that I sent through the post was negative, but I think this fatigue is potentially related to something, and I would like to have a colonoscopy to make sure that it's nothing in my bowel. Or do you have any family history?
Well, no family history. And I wasn't really thinking about my bowel. I was thinking, I'm 50 and I'd like to have my all my markers tested, like my bone density done, which I did at 40 and I did at 30. Have blood tests, see how my immune system's going. I do that every 10 years. And because at 50, one of the things that they talk about is, checking your bowels out. I had requested to do that just in my normal, let's get into my next 10 years, let's going on. And they said, "Oh no, there's really no reason." And especially when I told them that I had a negative result with the mycelium. They weren't interested in me doing that. So I did let that go and I did the other tests. And my other tests showed very similar to what I'd always had. It didn't show anything too overt.
And from when you passed that first blood clot to when you actually had your colonoscopy, how many months was that?
That was about a month.
And were you bleeding all the time as well, or no?
No.
Was it just one time? Wow.
One time, if I didn't look, I wouldn't have known.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't even know why I looked, to be honest. I just noticed it and thought, well, that's just the wrong colour, you know, so we better check that out. And that's how that came about. So over the Christmas period, I was eating really well, doing lots of things. And when I found out I had cancer, something overcame me like I'd never experienced before. And it was different to your experience, although I advocate much more probably for the way that you did things. But I changed, that day I changed everything. I got rid of all the toxic chemicals in the house, and there wasn't many, we were pretty aware. But my makeup, you know, even though I liked more natural, I really looked into that and realized actually a lot of that had something else going on. So I completely got rid of anything I used. And years ago I was a beauty therapist, so I loved fragrances and good makeup, and you know, I don't wear much of that now. I stopped colouring my hair.
Nail polish.
Yeah, no nail polish. You know, anything that can go on the body that can be absorbed, that's changed. I changed my water filter immediately. And I changed my diet, and I went to a whole food, plant-based, organic way of eating. So I don't eat vegan foods as such, although people would classify me as vegan. I don't eat anything processed. That's what I do. And so that excludes a lot of you know, non-meat type foods. We just eat fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and grains. And
so basically, did you have this knowledge, or was it something that you kind of, you know, you read a book and you thought, okay, well, in between now and what's happening next, I'm just going to start juicing and changing everything? Or
well, I collected a fair amount of books that I didn't follow particularly well over the years. You know, you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I had some knowledge, and I've always been interested in being, and I was, by most people's standards, a pretty healthy person. At 50, I wasn't on any medication. No, you know, my heart rate was great. Everything was fine. I probably carried more weight than I should have, but I didn't really look like it because I'm quite tall. I thought I had about 7 to 9 kilos to lose when I was thinking about weight in those years previously. But strangely, I did look up people who were eating better for cancer.
Yeah.
And 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗏 was definitely a person that came up, and I followed much of the way he ate in that healing stage.
Yeah.
Which was really just huge salads with as much vegetables as possible. 2 times a day. I had smoothies and I had juices and quite a lot of supplements that really I discerned for myself, but I did get help with later. And then I went to the 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗏𝗏 Foundation. I had my surgery to remove a portion of my bowel, which I recovered from extremely well. 3 weeks after that surgery, I went to 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗏, and I spent 5 days there, and they taught me, they took all the responsibilities of the world away for 5 days. I didn't have to wake myself up. They rung a little bell every morning and woke us up, and we had meditation, and there was beautiful 40 acres of land with so much wildlife. The food they cooked was from vegetables from their own garden. It was all whole food, plant-based, and I had a different experience of cooked food in that way, because really I was eating raw all that beforehand. So I'd made an enormous flip as far as my microbiome was concerned. It was a complete turnaround because I was a meat eater. And
that is incredible what you've done, because I mean, I made my changes slowly, and you know, I think most people think that that's hard enough. I mean, how did you, like, mindset wise, how did you, because you only had a short amount of time, right? Like from when they did your colonoscopy, how long did you have before your operation?
A month.
Yeah, so that, you
well,
know,
not even. I think I had 3 weeks. They wanted to do it sooner, but I said to him, I need time. Have I got time? And he said, you've got time, the surgeon said. And I said, I can't, I need to really think about where I'm at. I didn't know anybody personally that had cancer. And That's actually not true. I knew a couple of people, but I wasn't involved in their journey so much. You know, I didn't really understand what they were going through. And actually, as it turned out, a friend knew a friend who had bowel cancer. One of my girlfriends had bowel cancer. And really, I had no clue what that meant. And in some ways, I think I wasn't really there enough for her understanding. And actually, the guy that was at our vitamin store, that I used to buy my supplements from, or still do, he had bowel cancer too. And if I were to look at the evidence in front of me, I would have done chemotherapy, because all of them, 2 of them are 10 years and one is probably about 6 or 7 years post therapy, and they're okay. They're doing well. If you dug a little bit deeper, I know they all have continuing health issues. And that's different for me. I don't have any continuing health issues because I haven't had to break my immune system down, and I don't have to take medication, post chemo. So I know that I'm in a better situation in that sense. But they're living their lives happily and fully working, and so when it came time for me to make that decision, I just thought that's what I would do, even though I wasn't keen on the idea. When I read more about chemotherapy and I read more about my own immune system and realized how suppressed my immune system was, which is probably why my T cells, my immune system didn't recognize the tumor. I thought there's 2 ways to go: break it down or build it up. And for me, it was about building it up, and that doesn't match, unfortunately, what chemo is. They are actually suppressing your immune system. Which is where a lot of people get into trouble. It's not always the cancer that kills you, and I know that I won't be popular for saying that. But.
Yeah. So really, they said to you, okay, in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, we're going to take your tumor out, and then after that, you will need to have 12 sessions of FOLFOX, like I had, because was it stage 3 or?
I was considered 3C once we'd found it was in 9 of my lymph nodes.
Okay, after the operation. And at that point, they had already done a CT, and they had seen that on the CT there was nowhere else.
Nothing else.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so then when they went in, they took all the lymph nodes, and they said, because it's in the 9 lymph nodes, and then I can imagine that they said even more to you, you have to have the chemotherapy, right?
Yeah, they pretty much, the message that both my husband and got was, this is all you can do, and you have to do it or you won't survive. And that part of the conversation we didn't get till a little bit later. It wasn't because I had received the information, and I pretty much said to my oncologist, I need time to think about this. This is just information for me at this stage. I'm not saying I'm going to do anything yet. And that's when he panicked a little bit and sort of started that that rhetoric around, if it was my wife, I would absolutely have her do this, and as a friend, I'm telling you. And when he said those things, not so much the wife or mother aspect, but when he said to me as a friend, I thought, you're not my friend. I don't even know who you are. How can you be my friend? And I'm very literal that way. I don't like people speaking to me in a way that makes no sense to me. I know about connection. I'm a counsellor, I'm a trauma therapist, and I love people, and that's not connection for me. So
it just didn't come from the right place, right?
Yeah, it didn't come from the right place. But would he be considered a great oncologist? Yeah, he would. I know he's a great oncologist. Other people have good experiences with him, and I didn't have a bad experience. I just had a feeling like you might not be the guy for me. And I asked him, is this the only option I have? This particular protocol, it was 6 months of 3 different chemotherapy drugs, solid. And he said, this is it, this is all we've got for you. So I went away for a week or 2, and I came back, and I said to him, and before I started, he said, I have 2 other options for you.
What were the other options like? Was it different drugs? Or?
Different drugs, doing it from home, you know.
What, just pills? Just pills?
Yeah, just pills. And I thought, and I said to him, I thought I only had one option. And he said, well, you've got more options. So we had a discussion around what his responsibility, or I had a discussion about what his responsibility as a physician was, and that was to build a relationship with me and his patient. And he had no clue who I was, because this didn't imbue trust in me, excuse me, that he had, you know, not given me all my options right up front. And I said to him, I understand that some people need you to take control, but I actually have to know what's going on with my body. And as it turned out, I said no. I just decided, and my body, in every part of its own wisdom, was saying to me, this is not right for you, this is not right for you. And I was scared, and I felt panicked, because who was going to show me what to do? You know, I didn't really know what to do, and obviously I needed to do something. So I continued with all the information and all the things that I'd learned from the 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗡 Foundation. And while I was there, I met Daniel, who has become my naturopath. But he's so much more than a naturopath. He now runs the retreats at the 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗡 Foundation. That was his very first time there. When I was there, he was sitting in with our group of 30 people, all with cancer, all with varying degrees of therapies that they'd done, but all in a place where we knew there was more we had to do. And he was learning to be that person that now takes those groups. And I said to him, I don't know why, but I have a feeling that you're one of the people that needs to be on my team. And he was great. So immediately he started working with me, and he has studied with an oncologist, or an integrative oncologist in America, I believe. I could be wrong about where she's from, but he has a huge knowledge around cancer. And in fact, since that very, very early time, a couple of years ago, he now has his own practice from his place of residence, and he runs.
He's an integrative oncologist now.
Yes, and so he works mostly with people with cancer. Prior to that, he had his own practice working from rooms, you know, not too far away from here, but he saw all sorts of people with all sorts of conditions. Now he concentrates much more on people with cancer. So many people go to him who have chemo, and he supports them through that process. He's all about support. There's no judgment there. I think I'm one of the very few people that didn't do chemo. So he was great. He was great with me. And I still see Daniel, and he's my friend, and we've worked together a little bit, and we will continue that in the future. So his name is Daniel 𝗬𝗎, and his beautiful business is called 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗏, like a little nest.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it gorgeous? 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗏. So I do talk to people about who have had the cancer experience, and recommend that regardless of what they do, that they see someone like that can wholly, in a different way, support them.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
you started seeing him as kind of, you know, getting blood tests, you know, having a look at, you know, what your body needed as kind of like, you know, in addition to what was going on as well, and kept your diet. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I changed my initial doctor because she wouldn't run some of the tests that he needed. So he put me onto a great integrative doctor, and she's fantastic. 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗡, she came to appointments with me with people who I was researching, and I needed to talk to them and get some information, and she would come with me to take notes so that I would have all the information that I needed. She would go to workshops about things that I was researching if she could, and she's extremely open-minded about the fact that there are so many more things you can do when you have cancer, not just surgery, chemo and radiation. And they're doing many different things overseas as normal protocol that we have no access to here, which is why sometimes people leave the country to have their therapy. And that would have been what I would have chosen had I not, you know, been in the situation that I am now, where I don't have any evidence of cancer at this stage. And I hope that stays till I'm 94. But we all know what cancer is, and so it's a daily work.
Definitely, yeah.
It's not a treatment like chemotherapy and do it and then hope for the best. It's a every day, everything I do, I see as part of my treatment. I walk, I manage stress, I do work on my trauma, I meditate, I build my relationships to be strong. You know, I make my world a richer place, and that is my treatment every day. So it doesn't stop. It's never going to change. I'm always going to be doing what
I know.
do.
I think that's so relevant and so important, because when you choose the conventional medicine, you are led to believe, you know, turn up for your session, go home, and then afterwards just stay at home hoping for the best. But, you know, don't worry about anything else. Don't do anything else. And I so believe that you know, cancer, it's not like that. Once you have cancer, you need to work daily on your health. When we look, the reality is, with the lives that we're living, we all should be working daily on our health. You know, we, you know, take it for granted, and we think we can abuse our bodies and, you know, everything that, you know, oh, you know, no, I'm not too stressed. Oh, I can manage this, I can manage that. And before you know, the crash comes. So, but obviously when you have once you have had cancer, you're in a much more, you know, not fragile, but you've got to be very attentive about your health. And I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, people that are, you know, I don't think it's a place for us, like I said, you know, to judge. I think people need to do what's right for them. But definitely the answer, it's not turning after chemotherapy and radiotherapy and not changing anything else.
And not changing anything else, yeah. For a long-term prognosis, and I add a lot of things to that. I add, you know, if the fundamental part of you that needs healing is emotional or trauma, then you're only addressing your diet. That's not going to be enough, you know. And that's the thing about journeying inwards. And I know we hear that all the time. The answers are within, and all of that. And I totally believe that, but I see why people are cynical sometimes, because we're in an environment where we believe that things can come to us quickly, easily, and when we need them. And whether that's buying a house and furniture or a holiday or going to the doctor, the fixes are quick, and people haven't tapped into the idea that none of those things will. Then nothing fixes anything from the outside. It has to come from the inside. You have to know who you are, and to get to know that sometimes is it can be a tough path for some people. I didn't have cancer for no reason, and I'm not blaming my body or my anything, but I know that my contribution has been that I'm asleep about who I am, and you know, getting the help that I needed when I wasn't really well. And a lot of that for me was around the way I processed trauma. Have other people been through much bigger situations than I have and had less to worry about? Certainly, you know, everyone processes things differently, but I'm a very sensitive person, and I know that I didn't process some things terribly well. And that contributed to my unwellness. And it would have taken a long time to get to where I got, and it's going to take some time to undo it. But I also believe in miracles, and I believe that, you know, if there was a moment that I absolutely, to the core of me, believed something, it can change in an instant. So the doorways are very wide. If you want to walk through it, you can. And you know, there are a lot of people that don't agree with me. There's a lot of people that probably not my friends. Our friends have been extremely supportive and wonderful, but probably maybe outside of that, a little further out, people that don't know us, my husband and I, and our family terribly well. You know, my husband cops it more than I do. You know, how's Di doing? Oh, she's great. And he said, I'm sick of telling them that you're great because they don't believe me, because they think you haven't had chemo, you're going to die. And so he doesn't talk about it much anymore, because it's kind of like the relationship, you know, two people get together and everyone says, oh, they'll never last. and they can stay together for 25 years, and eventually someone will say, I told you they'd never
Yeah.
last. You know, never mind the 25 years they had. It feels like that sometimes, you know, that they're just waiting, not for something to happen to me, but it can't, some people can't grasp the fact that I've taken a bit of control of my own healing. And again, that almost has nothing to do with chemo. It has to do with so many other things, you know.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And how did you manage that? Like, you know, once you know, maybe not your friends, you mentioned your friends and they have been supportive, but have you had anybody close to you that said to you, this is crazy, you can't do this, Diane, you need to do chemotherapy? Like, how did you manage that? Because, you know, there will be people out there that they might feel inside themselves that they don't want to choose conventional medicine, and they don't want to choose a different path, but they are not going to be supported by the people around them, which is hard.
That's a huge part of the process that I think is extraordinarily difficult. My immediate family, my husband and my 2 boys, no question. I think no question about me making my own choices. In the middle of it, when I thought about it, I asked my husband and said, you know, if anything happens to me, should I die, are you going to be angry at me? And he stopped for a minute and he said, I don't know, maybe. And that hurt me. I wanted to know the answer, but I felt hurt. And about a day or 2 later, he said to me, oh no, I have thought about it. And he said, no, I wouldn't be. I've always believed that you would know what to do, and you just have to do what you want to do. And I'm really happy that you're doing what you're doing. He said, but fear does get in the way. And I interpreted that as anger, but I don't think it's anger. And so that was very early on, you know, when we weren't getting support from doctors and I didn't have a full team of people that I could turn to yet. And as time's gone on, and I healed like nothing I've ever known before. It was amazing what I could do. My body just dropped 20 kilos of weight that I didn't know I had. I thought I was about, 7, 9 kilos.
Yeah.
It just went away. So, and it was a little bit too much. I wasn't probably eating enough food, or I ate a lot, but not enough to sustain keeping any weight on. So I actually had to find a balance. And I put on about 4 kilos, which I feel comfortable with now. But in the meantime, that was just one surgery and doing really, really well. In the meantime, my markers started to go back up again. And we realized...
and you were being checked by the oncologist still. Okay.
Yeah.
So even though you said it to them, and I think that's quite important for people to say, because I think, it's quite a hard on the kind of practicality sense. You think, well, if I say no to them, can I even go there to have blood tests done? Can I even go, people don't know that they can even do that, right? They just think that they need to almost like buy the whole package. They need to do the chemotherapy, otherwise they don't want to have anything to do with you. So how did that work for you? So
I was having blood tests, I think it was every
3 months, would say, right?
Yeah, I think for me at that time it was about every 2 months. And
okay.
My surgeon and my who was fantastic, a surgeon, both of them were really good. I just didn't click with the idea of chemo, but the oncologist was a nice guy. He was always respectful. So I alternated between seeing them for my tests and anything that I needed doing. And my markers were low after surgery, but there's a lot going on in your body, and I've learned since then that really affects your markers straight away. So probably about maybe 7 or 8 months in, they started going up from 1 to 2, and then 2 to 4, and then 2 to 8, 4 to 8. So it was, they were doubling pretty quickly.
And that's the tumour markers, right? The CEA.
This is the tumour marker, CEA for bowel cancer. Yeah. And so then, of course, they recommended that I have another CT scan, which I did, and I had 2 MRIs, and I had a PET scan. So I was well and truly scanned and radiated by that stage. and they discovered that I had 5 tumours in my liver.
Mm.
So that when it travelled through my lymph nodes, it had already gone to my liver, but they couldn't detect it at that time. And they said to me that that's been here the whole time. So really what they were saying to me is when I had that bowel screening test, you know, earlier that year, I was actually a stage 4, and it didn't pick it up. So I have a little issue with the screening.
So you're talking about the bowel screening when you were 50 with that test?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So they didn't pick up anything, nothing.
No.
They believed that had already been inside you. You were already stage 4.
Yeah, it was all there when I was in surgery for my bowel, and it had moved through the lymph nodes, and it had actually reached my liver, and I had five tumours. And so when I haven't found the right way to talk to people about the screening test, because I understand we need screening, but I really don't think that they should advertise about
100%, yeah.
You know, being safe. Once you have it, you feel lucky that you get the negative result, and you can move on. That's not the case for everybody, and we should be made aware of that.
Especially if you're having things like low energy and added symptoms, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the doctors think that way too. That they once I was clear, no one asked me any questions about my bowel at all. It was all about menopause. And, I was obviously in menopause. I didn't have my period anymore, and I had some slight hot flushes and things. So we were addressing that, but I did have bowel issues that should have been addressed. And I don't know, when it comes to chronic illness, I'm not so sure our system works terribly well. I felt like a whole heap of stuff was a bit of guesswork, to be honest. And there's a part of me that is just okay with that, because we're human, and doctors are not immortal and amazing that they can't get things wrong. They get things wrong every single day, over and over again. A lot of the time, there's a lot of work they have to do to get it right. So in accepting that, it just meant that I never put anyone else in control of my power anymore. Yeah. It meant that I could stand with them and ask questions and tell them about who I am and what's been going on. And they needed to listen. And if they didn't listen, then I would just move to somebody else.
Yeah.
And hopefully with a referral from somebody that I knew.
So how did you feel like when they actually told you, like, you got?
I wasn't impressed. It was not what I was interested in hearing. And I was in such incredible health. I had never been fitter in my life.
Wow, so you're feeling good and everything.
Oh, I was climbing mountains. I never ran out of breath or energy. I've never experienced anything like it. Changing my diet and all the other things was the best thing I've ever done with my life. And the day before I was scheduled for surgery, I did decide it was a hard decision to make whether or not to have the liver surgery. Yeah, and my surgeon, who was also amazing, said to me, "Wow, you're a chemo virgin." And I laughed, and he said, by the time I see people here, they've gone and done all of that. And often I have to say no to them. Only 17% of people can have that surgery because they are so depleted from the...
And the liver has been working so hard to detoxify from all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. So I was actually a candidate. It was only in one lobe. So they could remove that lobe, which is about 2/3 of your liver. Unfortunately, my gallbladder had to go with it. And when I had the previous surgery, one of my ovaries had to go with it. So after these surgeries, I said to my husband, I have to stop, because every time I go, there's a couple of things that go missing and I'll have nothing left. So we had to work out other things. But that was a very big surgery. It was by liver surgery standards, mine was extremely successful, much less time, but I hardly had any weight on, and I was extremely fit. And I had I still do, but I had a really great positive attitude. And my surgeon said to me, "You couldn't have been in a better state to have this surgery." And my liver was in beautiful condition, except it had tumours in it. It wasn't an unwell liver as such. And so that was really reassuring to me that, you know, the rest of my liver, how lucky, you know, it was in the organ that can grow back.
Yeah.
So my liver grew back in between 6 and 12 weeks. I had a fully functioning liver.
Wow.
As far as size goes. But, you know, the function of the liver is very complicated and those processes take a long time. So I'm still healing from that even now. And what I mean about that is that, you know, understanding my own body, I realize the relationship between your digestion and your bowels and your liver and your spleen, everything, the way everything works together, they all affect one another. And I didn't get a lot of information about how to deal with the function of that. My naturopath helped me with that. And I also employed a nutritionist who has been incredibly helpful. And she also has a special lean towards cancer. So she had a lot of knowledge about my particular situation. And I did things like a DNA test, just to see which of my genes were switched on and off, because you can control them with food and what you do, you know, reducing stress. So she said to me, here's the interesting thing, you know, there's so much in your DNA that suggests you would have many chronic illnesses, and yet all of those are downregulated, all because of the way you eat.
Wow.
So,
incredible.
you know, yeah, it just gave me that extra push to know that the path that I'm on is the right path for me. To eat better and do better things for yourself is the right path for everyone, but when it comes to treatments, that's everyone's own decision, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
And
so is this a test that your nutritionist can ask for? Is that something separate than your doctors, or? Yeah.
It's a specific type of, it was a DNA test and a microbiome test.
Okay.
So she did those, and, you know, I can get the names of those things from her, and you can, you know, share them with
write it down on
there might be other people that do that.
Yeah.
And along the way there was some really, you know, great information I got. I think she's an integrative doctor, I'm not sure what her specialties are, in Queensland, who I was put on to by my integrative doctor here to send me some melatonin in very high doses, so that I could take that before I have any of my like CT scans or a PET scan or anything that requires a high amount of radiation. You know, you could take that to help flush the radiation out of your body, because I had done some testing very early on, an 𝗪𝗔𝗂𝗧𝘂𝗧 and also a toxicity test. And my body, for whatever reason, actually carries a lot of radiation. So I want to be doing, you know, a minimal amount with my screenings as I possibly can. Or if I have to do them, I need to be able to get it out of my system. So, you know, along the way, I was fortunate enough to have lots of information come to me about people that could be really helpful.
Definitely.
You know, with one little thing here and there makes a really big difference in the long
term. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you know, this is what I tell people, you know, you make a small change today, and then you make another one tomorrow and another one next week. You know, everything starts compounding. And when you know, like, I still make changes today, and one, is much easier today to make changes. And two, like, the results, like, when you start compounding, it's like interest, isn't it? Like, now, by the time you've been doing it for 2 years, it's so, you'll feel like so much better every time you make a tiny little change, which for somebody from the outside, it looks like a massive one. But if you've been doing work all the time on your health, it's not that hard for us anymore to do that, right?
No, it's not. And in fact, one of my challenges was being able to recognize how to dial some of it down, to not, you know, I in the beginning it was organic and whole food, and, you know, I couldn't eat anywhere. I couldn't go to anybody's house without taking my own food. And it was a real challenge, because here we were hitting our 50s, ready to spend some time together as a couple, because we've got a couple of boys, you know, and they're now nearly 18 and 21. So at that time it was 16 and you know, what was he, 17 or something like that, the eldest one. 18, and we were ready to go away a little bit more and go out to dinner and be with friends, you know, all of that. We were ready to do that, and we both came to a screeching halt because, you know, I couldn't even drink the water that they gave you from the tap. In my mind, that was too toxic for my body still, you know. So it was a bit like being in a bubble to start with. So my mind change is the opposite. I had to learn to step back from the purity of it, and at certain times to realize that the joy of the situation that I'm in can trump everything as well. You know, that didn't mean that I ever eat McDonald's. Or I still eat whole food, plant-based. That doesn't change, but I can, you know, work my way around it and feel like I'm part of something, because otherwise it's not worth anything either.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was more of a challenge, but I feel much better about that these days. Great, actually. Yeah.
So you know, I think you'll talk a little bit about, you know, why you think you got cancer, but like if somebody was to ask you, why do you think you got cancer, what would you say?
I wasn't very good at listening to myself. And when I say that, I had quite a few things happen when I was young that caused trauma for me. And those things, some of those things were ongoing, right till I got cancer. So I felt like I was always putting my body into some sort of defense. I was making sure I had some sort of defenses going on. And when you're in that chronic fight, you are releasing hormones like cortisol that break down your immune system. So in a lot of ways, the way I handled stress, and that doesn't mean that outwardly you look like a stressful person. It means that inwardly you're handling life like a stressful person. I probably had quite severe anxiety, but I didn't recognize it because anxiety is all about looking into the future and making sure everything's just working right, that you have every scenario sorted out. That's how my brain went from when I was really young, because I was often put in situations that I didn't know what was going on, or I didn't feel safe. So I learned that, and I never dropped it. I always had that feeling until this experience. And I feel like there's been some health taps on the shoulder that I've had throughout my life that I didn't pay close enough attention to. And I know people say those things, but cancer in itself, and I've had a very different experience, I know, because I haven't had chemo. And lots of people relate chemo to the experience of cancer. You know, I have to sometimes remind them that you know, losing your hair and being really, really, really sick isn't always the cancer experience. It's a chemotherapeutic experience. And so not having that, sometimes people don't see me as a person that really has cancer, you know, because I look too well, you know, and they can't relate to that. And my boys haven't had the experience of having to watch me be really sick. So we have a different bench line of what cancer looks like. But that's just today. Nobody knows what the future brings, and nobody knows what their experiences with other people will be. And, you know, I think the point is that everybody's on their own path, and that we should all love and respect each other while we're going through it. Sorry, I've lost track. What was the?
Yeah. I was asking like why you hate cancer. Yeah. So with the trauma that you mentioned, like, you know, you had some. You said some things that so resonate with me and in my journey as well. I think, you know, so when you talk about you carried that with you, so it's almost like you had, you know, you held on to some unresolved trauma, right? Yes. Did you seek help for anything like that? I know you were a counselor, or did you do the internal work yourself, or?
I did seek help several times. I've had counselling myself, and I sometimes for longer periods of time. But when I look back, the cognitive therapy didn't really work very well. It was okay. What it did was set up other processes in my mind. They were mental things that I had to learn to try and get through the day. And when I say try and get through the day, I didn't find getting through the day really, really difficult, except when I did have postnatal depression. That was a difficult time. But that was sort of environmental. I had actually lost my mum when I was 5, so I didn't have the experience of motherhood as such. And I was becoming a mum, and it was all such a big thing, along with everything else that had happened. So I actually worked through that, and when I had my second baby, I didn't have postnatal again. It was not a chemical imbalance for me, which was great. But what I found is that trauma is hidden deeply in your subconscious, and you have to go to that place to heal trauma. It's not in your head. You can't do it with cognitive, or I couldn't do it with a cognitive therapy. So I actually did journey into that place, and later on found a process called TRTP, which I now am a student of. I'm almost finished my time and will be practicing that as well. And it was great. That was really good for me, along with some other things.
So what does TRTP stands for?
It's the Richards trauma process, and it's all about. So it's a Judith Richards put it together. A woman put it together who had gone through significant trauma herself, and she'll be the first person to say it's a whole heap of different types of therapies put together in a certain synergistic way that helps you resolve things on an unconscious level, which is where all of those things reside, because when you have trauma, it's like that event or whatever it is still going on, and it drives the decisions that you make today. Your reactions to them can, for many people when they go to that place, can be just as real and as forceful as the day that those things happened. So when I started to realize that, I read books like The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton.
Bruce Lipton, he's awesome. He's amazing.
He's amazing. And I've been reading a lot of things since I was 20. In fact, I think I gave all my books away because for whatever reason, I just couldn't walk my talk with them. I wanted so much to be the person in those books. And yet I couldn't do it. So I gave it away and thought, I'm not going to read another thing, because I have to start doing some things and not just reading about them. And eventually that came for me through this process. So, is cancer a gift? Well, I wouldn't give it to anyone, so I don't see it as a gift, but I see it as an opportunity for any illness is an opportunity, I think, to stop. And there's the kicker. It's not that, you want to, I would say, have a close look before you are forced to stop.
Exactly. That is so. And when I looked into starting my own business, I thought it would be so good to help people with cancer, because they can do so much during chemotherapy. For all the small changes I did, I finished chemotherapy stronger than physically than I started. I'm one of the lucky ones. I don't take any medication.
No luck. You do.
No luck. It's true. I don't suffer from any side effects. I don't have any issues in my health. But what really, like when you say is cancer a gift? Look, like you said, I don't wish what I have been through to anyone. Because it was brutal. It wasn't easy. So if people could just pay attention of some of those signs, your body's there saying, look at me, like I'm not very well, paying attention, what about this, what about that? If they could just stop before they crash, because, what you said about, you were not associated with that sick patient, with, during chemotherapy, but, the cancer journey starts when people tell you those words, you have cancer.
Yes.
They take that rug from underneath your feet, and all of a sudden you need to learn how to live in that uncertainty. And for people like what you described, what you were like, and like me, we were planning things ahead. We got everything sorted out. You really have to to learn how to live a little different.
Yes, you've got a lot of voices telling you what to do. You're the person that needs to stop for a minute. And that was a challenge. That's my whole life. You know, that was a huge challenge. It's still a challenge. And I had to face that voice that said, what the hell are you doing? You know, you're going to die. You are going to die, woman. What are you doing? And so here's my little death thing, you know, the whole, what am I scared of about dying? And that took some time to face that too, so that I could move forward. And what I realized was I actually wasn't afraid of dying because of beliefs that I have. You know, everyone has their own. I was scared of how I was going to die. That's what I was worried about. So, you know, I did, again, because I researched, I did some work and talked to a few people, and I had in my own mind, you know, some sort of plan around that, so that it's not a problem. And, you know, I like to believe that anything is possible, but there's part of me that's a realist. And, you know, if anything should happen, I just want to know that I have some idea of where I'm going and what I'm doing. And once I sorted that out, I don't even think about dying. I rarely think about cancer, to be honest, because now I'm not just eating to get rid of cancer. I'm eating for my health, you know, and so it's not the same, which is why accepting some changes, you know, has been able to come, because in those early days, it was all about, if I put this in my mouth, will that contribute to or relieve cancer? If I do this, will it contribute to or relieve cancer? So it was a real therapy, and it wasn't short. It's been, you know, especially with the second surgery, it was it's 2 years of constantly thinking about it. It's only the last 2 or 3 months that I've really started to, probably 4 months actually, that I've really started to settle that down a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I saw a huge difference between my last check, my last CT, which is probably 4 or 5 months ago, which was probably a year after the end of my treatment, to my last one, which was only, I had the results last week. You know, in that first year, you still, like you said, you know, you wake up and what exercise I'm going to do today. Now, it's not like an option. I have to do exercise because I want to keep cancer away. You know, like what, you know, meditation I'm doing, what, you know, what I'm going to listen today, what am I going to eat? You're in that mode. But now it just became more of like, what am I doing today for me? You know, and you all of a sudden that word cancer and that the experience is just, it's just a little bit further, you know, from being right here in your, you know, like in your face.
Yeah.
And like I said, it does not work. It doesn't happen overnight. You need to do a lot of work to get to that place too, I feel.
You do. And, you know, you get a little ache in your knee and you think, what do you think, Angelica? What's the first? Yeah. I've got a little ache in my head. I have to say to myself, no, it's not a tumor. It may be a headache, you know. But so you know, wellness is one thing, but there are reminders all the time and your reaction's the perfect one, because Jay and I always laugh, and I'll say, he'll say, I haven't got cancer. We'll have a little bit of a laugh about it. And this was my problem, is the day before I had my liver surgery, I literally ran up a hill. We have mountains just behind where I live here. It's 34 minutes it took me it was half walk, half run, but it's the kind of hill that when you walk down, you have to be careful you don't slip. So it's quite steep. So the day before I actually go in for the biggest surgery of my life, I'm running up a mountain. I get to the top, and it's a magnificent day, and I look around and I think, okay, this is great, but how am I ever going to know that I'm well or I'm sick? Because how can I be so sick that I need to have almost my liver taken out tomorrow, and today I can run up a mountain? So it was very confronting to me that actually I have to listen really closely now. I don't really know. And look, you know, who knows? Those tumours may have gone away on their own. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough knowledge at that time to say no to the surgery. So I went into the surgery with all my faith. And that's the key, I think, for anyone, even if you're doing chemo, you know, find a way to look at that like liquid gold if it's going in your veins and doing what it needs to do. That was part of my problem with the chemo, is that I couldn't do that with that particular process.
Yeah.
I could do it with other things. And I remember saying to my surgeon, you know this is going to sound weird, but I'm a really big believer in energy, that we're all energy. And so when you go in there, can you please not say anything negative? Because I don't want any negative energy around me.
I bet they all love you.
Yeah.
Here comes again.
I think they're always surprised to see me, to be honest. Oh, you're still here. Oh.
Yeah.
But, you know, gracious enough. But he did an amazing job. Of my scar it's almost gone. It's just, and it's big, you know, and it's taken a long time to heal from it. But it's, you know, it's amazing. So for me, you know, I did choose surgery, and I actually acutely, you know, when we need acute help like accidents and things like that, I think our system is set up amazing. We've got some skilled people, but I don't, and I'm happy to say it out loud, I do not think our system is set up for chronic illness.
No.
You know, you can't heal from taking medications that give you side effects that you have to take more medication for. That's never going to happen for anybody. So I'm not an advocate. I'm really happy to say it out loud. And I think it's our responsibility as human beings to say, you know, regardless of what I'm doing now, this is all I know. I'm going to take pills. I'm going to listen to this advice, but I'm going to look a little deeper, because this is my life. This is my life.
But also I feel that, you know, health professionals are sitting in a very hard place these days, because you went out there and you read all about it and you took the responsibility, but people do not want to hear, by the way, you've got cancer, you need to change your diet, you need to do exercise, you need to solve your traumas, you need to go and speak to the psychologist, because most people say, sorry, I'm not doing any of it. Where's the magic pill?
Yeah.
So really, our system is set up to cater for most people, because most people, they just want that, you know, the easiest option. And you know, when you talk about being on top of the mountain, thinking, you know, like, you know, how am I ever going to know? Those tumors didn't happen overnight, as me and you know. You've been having problems with your bowel, your health for years. But, you know, those tumors were, if they are, you know, you can identify them with your old life. Like you said, potentially they have gone away by themselves, but they are not a reflection of your new life now. But, you know, it's, like I said, it's important for you to make that decision and to be in peace with that decision. You know, and I, for myself, I only made peace with the decision that I had made with the chemotherapy after I read 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗓𝗓's book, You Can Conquer Cancer. And he said, whatever you do, you need to make peace with it. You know, and if it's chemotherapy, you need to make peace with it. And that's when I started going. I was like halfway through treatment. I started going to hospital, and I started, you know, just saying to myself, this liquid is helping me. This is just, you know, doing what it needs to do. You know, I feel I am in peace with what I'm doing. But, you know, healing doesn't happen overnight. And we are not, most of us are not prepared to wait for this is the reality of it. You know,
that is the reality. Yeah. And you're right, the system is set up that way. My challenge is always, you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I actually believe we've been conditioned to fit into that kind of paradigm. And you're right, there will always be people. I know my father's passed away now, and to me that was, and it was just before I got cancer.
Yeah.
Literally, you know, half a year or something. So, but that was a blessing for my journey, that he wasn't here. I would always want him here, but when it came to the person that would probably make this journey so hard for me, he would be the one, because he was so scared to make a decision that doctors wouldn't agree with. If I was doing what I was doing, I would be in constant conflict of what my beautiful dear father would want me to do, you know. So I've often, we have a great relationship. I talk to him frequently. And, you know, I often say, oh, what, you know, I hope you're doing great, but what a blessing that I didn't have to be. And part of that trauma of my history is with my dad. Not that he did anything wrong, it was just a difficult life. And so, you know, both sensitive people that just couldn't let go of each other's, you know, traumas. And so I think, you know, if you've got people that are making it hard for you, whether it's medical people or family, that's very tough.
Yeah,
and
it is.
I was lucky. I had people who understood me, and if not understood me, there are enough people to not say you shouldn't do it. You know.
Exactly.
So
2 last questions. What was the most positive thing on your journey?
What's the most positive thing? Oh, so many positive things. The most positive thing about this journey, now that it's this far in, is that I don't have fear like I had before. There's nothing that I fear. I can worry about stuff, but that deep-seated fear is completely gone. And I don't know what it was about. Can't say I was scared of flying. It wasn't that. It was like I didn't have solid feet on the ground, that I didn't belong to the planet, that I had no real place, and I don't feel that anymore. And it's connected me incredibly beautifully to the people that really matter. And in my experience, that's nearly everybody I knew anyway. I was not one of those people that lost a whole heap of people during the journey. I know some people do.
Yeah.
I am, and in fact, it's probably my world's multiplied because of this experience. And I think maybe just not choosing chemo means people are watching you to see how you're going, and they're asking. And so some of my friends would say to their friends who are having a tough time, you know, give Di a call. And so a lot of people call me. I don't tell them what to do, but I share information.
Yeah.
And they become friends, and they have journeys, and they have great experiences that they can share. And it's just made my life a whole heap richer, to be honest. And it's not about illness or anything. Sometimes it's got nothing to do with cancer. It just seems to be people are reaching out everywhere. So I have this great connection of this tapestry that wasn't there before. It's really nice.
Awesome. So what would you say to somebody who has just been diagnosed with stage 3C bowel cancer?
What would I say? Yeah. Oh, gosh, what a ride. I would just say to them, if they could, to take a little bit of time. Most of the time when you hear cancer, the very next thing that happens is you're on what feels often like a conveyor belt, and you're straight into surgery and straight into treatment and straight into... So even if you decided to do those things, you know, research, have a look for yourself what they mean, what they are, and assimilate them into what you want out of the experience. And in that little bit of time, if you could find 2 weeks to a month where you could change some things, you know, go to sleep earlier, slow work down, start to eat, you know, start eating in a different way, change some things that you want to change for yourself. Because all of us, when we get to any kind of junction with these things that are so big in our life, there was a whole lot of things behind us that we always think, oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I found more time for this, found more time for that. So I think, yes, you're going to be thrown into this enormous experience, but if you could just give yourself some time to really look at your options and just change one thing where you do something that you enjoy more than what you're doing right now, I think you'll start that pattern of change at the beginning. And whatever you decide to do, believe it to the core of you that that's the thing. And that is 1/3 of the way through the journey. If you're choosing chemotherapy, believe in chemotherapy and embrace it and let it show you the path to healing. If you choose chemotherapy and you're scared to death of it, you need time.
Yeah.
And it's the same the other way around. If you choose to do something like me, is that, you know, but when I chose it, I knew to the core of me, Didn't mean it wasn't scary. I just knew that this was the right thing to do. And that's what people need to find their way through. And I think that if you're tumbling along because someone told you what to do and you haven't even had time to take a breath, that's a very tough experience. I think you have no control over that. You need to find some.
Definitely.
And of course, support, find your support people. Find people to support you.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. That is so good. Thank you so much, Diane, for sharing your story. So many good insights. If you don't mind, I'll put some of the things that we talked about in the comments below as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the integrative doctor's details, and all the little bits and pieces, the Goal Foundation, which is amazing that you're just, there for, to be close to them as well. But, I suppose people could fly from all over Australia, from all over the world. I mean, young Gola's story is amazing and his book is amazing. So there is, like I said, there is a lot that you can do.
So much you can do. So much more than you think you can do. No matter what your choice is. That's the point.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm going to finish by saying that if you want to change your life physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, get in touch. So, I believe in making small changes that will make a massive impact in your life. I'll put my details below as well, but thanks for watching, and I hope this is insightful, and I hope this gives you some hope to move forward to. Take care.
Thank you.